Meet two coworkers, same company, same department, same salary of $67,000 a year. Marcus spends Sunday nights anxious. His credit card balance hasn't dropped below $8,000 in 3 years. He makes the minimum payment, tells himself next month will be different, and opens a food delivery app while thinking about it. He isn't reckless, he doesn't gamble, he doesn't have a spending problem he can point to. He just never seems to get ahead. Delia spends Sunday nights meal prepping. Her credit cards get paid in full every month. She has 6 months of expenses saved and contributes 14% of every paycheck to her retirement account. Same salary, same city, same cost of living. The difference between Marcus and Delia isn't income, it isn't luck, it isn't discipline in any dramatic sense. It's 8 behavioral habits that Marcus never examined and Delia quietly eliminated years ago. Debt doesn't survive because people don't earn enough. Debt survives because of behavior, specific, identifiable, changeable behavior. Today, we're going through the 8 behavioral habits that keep people in debt regardless of how much they earn. Not theories, not general advice, the exact psychological patterns that explain why millions of Americans carry balances they never clear, month after month, year after year. Habit 1. Spending to recover. Most chronic debt isn't built through luxury, it's built through recovery spending. You have a brutal week at work, you deserve a nice dinner. You get disappointing news, you buy something to feel better. You're exhausted on Friday, you order delivery instead of cooking. Each of these decisions is understandable in isolation. The problem is frequency. When emotional discomfort becomes a consistent trigger for spending, your credit card becomes a coping mechanism, and coping mechanisms don't respond to budget spreadsheets. Research on financial behavior consistently shows that stress spending is one of the primary drivers of revolving credit card debt. The purchase provides temporary emotional relief. The bill arrives 3 weeks when the emotional event is long forgotten. The connection between the feeling and the cost never registers clearly enough to change behavior. Marcus doesn't know he does this. That's what makes it so effective at keeping him stuck. He doesn't see a pattern, he sees individual justified purchases. Delia recognized the pattern in herself years ago. Now she has a different recovery system that costs nothing. Habit 2. Anchoring to minimum payments. There's a number on your credit card statement designed to keep you in debt as long as mathematically possible. It's called the minimum payment, and the people who set that number are not on your side. A $9,000 credit card balance at 22% interest with a minimum payment of around $180 per month takes approximately 8 years to pay off. Total interest paid exceeds $8,000. You nearly double the original balance through interest alone. Most people anchored to minimum payments genuinely believe they're managing their debt responsibly. They're current, they're not missing payments, they're doing what the statement asks. What the statement asks is specifically engineered to maximize the interest you pay over the longest possible period. Minimum payment thinking treats debt as a permanent fixture rather than a temporary problem. People budget around it. They factor it into their monthly expenses as a fixed cost, like rent or utilities. Once debt becomes a line item rather than an emergency, the urgency to eliminate it disappears. The debt becomes part of the lifestyle, and lifestyles are remarkably difficult to change. The person paying $180 monthly on that $9,000 balance feels responsible. They're not late, they're not in collections, but they're also paying a bank $8,000 in interest for the privilege of spreading out a purchase they made years ago. That transaction is invisible inside the minimum payment. That's exactly why it works. Habit 3. Identity spending. Every social group has financial expectations. The neighborhood you live in, the career you hold, the friend group you belong to, the online communities you follow. Each of these environments carries implicit spending requirements that feel like personality rather than pressure. A lawyer who drives an old, reliable sedan gets comments from colleagues. A parent in an affluent suburb who doesn't enroll their child in expensive activities feels the social temperature drop. A young professional who declines group vacations gets labeled as someone who doesn't prioritize experiences. Identity spending is the most invisible habit on this list because it masquerades as personal choice. You're not overspending, you're just being yourself. You're just living appropriately for someone in your position. Here's what nobody tells you about identity spending. The people creating the social pressure often can't afford it either. They're running the same deficit you are to maintain the same appearance you're trying to match. The entire peer group is financing a collective illusion on rotating credit. The boat owner at the neighborhood cookout has $340 monthly storage fees, $1,800 in annual insurance, and a loan with 4 years remaining. He looks like someone who has it figured out. His credit card statement tells a different story. Delia stopped caring about this years ago, not because she's indifferent to social connection, but because she consciously decided that her financial security matters more than her peer group's perception of her lifestyle. That decision is available to anyone. Most people never make it explicitly. Habit 4. The fresh start trap. January 1st, a new job, a birthday, a bonus, moving to a new city. These moments feel like financial resets, and that feeling is precisely what makes them dangerous. The fresh start trap works like this. A symbolic new beginning creates a psychological permission slip to clear the mental ledger of past financial behavior. Old debt feels like it belongs to a different version of you. New spending feels consequence-free because this time will be different. Research on the fresh start effect shows that people are significantly more likely to pursue goals following temporal landmarks. This is genuinely useful for behavior change in many areas. In personal finance, it creates a cycle where people make ambitious plans at each fresh start, maintain them briefly, accumulate new debt when motivation fades, and then wait for the next fresh start to try again. Marcus has started over financially 11 times since he was 23. He has a detailed budget document saved on his laptop from each attempt. None of them addressed the behaviors that created the debt in the first place. They just created new optimistic projections built on top of unchanged habits. The debt that felt like it belonged to last year's version of him was still there in February. It was always still there in February. Real financial change doesn't come from fresh starts. It comes from understanding exactly why the last attempt failed and specifically addressing that mechanism. The calendar doesn't reset your psychology. Only examining your psychology does. Habit 5. Lifestyle creep without awareness. Lifestyle creep is well documented. Income rises, spending rises to match. What's less discussed is how it happens below the threshold of conscious decision-making. Nobody decides to inflate their lifestyle. They decide to get a nicer apartment because they can finally afford it. They decide to upgrade their car because the old one needed repairs anyway. They decide to eat out more because they're working harder and deserve the convenience. Each decision is individual and justifiable. The pattern is invisible. The mechanism that makes lifestyle creep so effective at preventing wealth building is adaptation. Within 60 to 90 days of any lifestyle upgrade, the new standard becomes the baseline. The nicer apartment isn't a luxury anymore, it's just where you live. The upgraded car isn't a reward, it's just your car. The dining out habit isn't a treat, it's just how you eat. Once adapted, downgrading feels like deprivation, not returning to normal. Deprivation. This psychological ratchet effect means lifestyle creep is nearly irreversible without significant intentional effort. People will endure genuine financial stress before they'll voluntarily reduce a lifestyle they've adapted to. Consider what this costs in real numbers. Someone earning $75,000 who allows lifestyle creep to absorb every raise over a decade ends up saving the same dollar amount at $95,000 that they saved at $65,000. The $30,000 income increase built zero additional wealth. It built a more expensive normal. The families who build wealth on average incomes share one consistent behavior. They deliberately delay lifestyle upgrades even when income makes those upgrades technically affordable. They treat the gap between what they earn and what they need as an asset rather than a problem to solve with spending. Habit 6. Avoiding the exact numbers. There is a specific kind of financial anxiety that causes people to avoid looking at their actual numbers, the balance, the total debt, the net worth calculation, the retirement projection. Avoidance feels protective. If you don't look, you can't be devastated by what you see. The problem is that avoidance doesn't change the numbers. It just removes your ability to act on them. You can't navigate toward a destination you refuse to look at. Research on financial avoidance shows a clear pattern. People who avoid checking account balances and credit card statements consistently spend more than people who monitor their finances regularly. Awareness itself is a spending deterrent. When you know your exact number, every purchase exists in relation to that number. When you don't know, every purchase exists in isolation. Marcus hasn't opened his retirement account statement in 14 months. He tells himself he'll look when things are better. Things aren't getting better because he isn't looking. Delia checks every account every Sunday evening, 10 minutes, not because she enjoys it, because she understands that clarity is the foundation of every financial decision she makes. The number you're afraid to see is exactly the number you need to see. Whatever it is, it's already true. Looking at it doesn't make it worse, it makes it actionable. Habit 7. Treating debt as normal. Consumer debt has become so culturally embedded that many people genuinely cannot imagine life without it. Car payments feel inevitable. Credit card balances feel standard. Student loans feel permanent. The aggregate picture is a life structured entirely around ongoing debt obligations that consume a significant portion of every paycheck indefinitely. When debt feels normal, eliminating it stops feeling urgent. It becomes a background condition rather than a crisis requiring resolution. People manage their debt rather than attacking it. They refinance rather than pay off. They consolidate rather than eliminate. They optimize the terms of their ongoing indebtedness rather than questioning why they're indebted at all. Here's the reframe that changes everything. Debt is not a financial tool. It is the transfer of your future income to someone else's present profit. Every dollar of interest you pay is a dollar of your future labor that you already sold. The bank isn't helping you afford things. The bank is purchasing your future earnings at a discount. According to Federal Reserve data, the average American household carrying credit card debt pays over $1,000 annually in interest alone. That's $1,000 that builds nothing, buys nothing lasting, creates no asset. It disappears entirely into the cost of having borrowed. Multiply that over a decade, and you have $10,000 that went directly from your paycheck to a bank's profit margin. People who build genuine wealth treat debt as a temporary emergency to be eliminated as rapidly as possible, rather than a permanent feature to be managed indefinitely. Habit 8. No defined financial identity. This is the root habit, the one underneath all the others. Most people have never explicitly decided what kind of financial person they are. They've never written down what they believe about money, what they want their financial life to look like, or what they're willing to sacrifice to get there. Without that foundation, every financial decision gets made in a vacuum, subject to emotion, social pressure, convenience, and marketing. People with a defined financial identity make decisions differently. When a purchase doesn't align with their stated financial values, the friction is immediate and internal. They don't need external accountability or budget alerts. They have a clear answer to the question, is this who I am? Delia decided at 26 that she was someone who never carried a credit card balance. Not because she couldn't, because she decided she was the kind of person who didn't. That identity decision shaped 10 years of subsequent choices without requiring willpower for each individual transaction. She didn't resist the food delivery app through discipline. She didn't relate to it. It wasn't consistent with who she had already decided to be. Identity-based financial decisions are more durable than goal-based financial decisions because they're not contingent on outcomes. Goals can be abandoned when progress is slow. Identity persists. Decide who you are financially before the next spending decision arrives. The decision made in advance is always clearer than the decision made under pressure. The practical implementation of these 8 habits starts with one action. Write down the specific habit from this list you recognized most clearly in yourself. Not the one that sounds most interesting, the one that made you slightly uncomfortable when you heard it. That discomfort is recognition. Then ask one question. What would have to change this week, concretely and specifically, for that habit to lose its grip? Not next month, not at the next fresh start, this week. Marcus and Delia will both show up to the same office next Monday, same salary, same opportunities. 5 years from now, one of them will have options the other cannot imagine. The divergence isn't happening in some dramatic future moment. It's happening right now in the small behavioral patterns that feel too ordinary to matter. You can see them now. That changes